good reading to give you some meat for your prayer for Israel.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Excellent. I was reading that this morning in my quiet time, and I just let that be my
Sure.
prayer time.
So good instruction there. So as you pray for Israel, read Isaiah 50 through 55 and pray that back to God. All right, well, welcome everybody for our Wednesday night Bible study. For those who are watching online, we want to give a shout out to Tony McBee.
Hey, Tony!
Yeah, sorry you couldn't join us tonight. We miss you. Well, tonight we are continuing on with our world news. Luke chapter 21. We will read verses 20 through 28, and we will see how God's scripture is there for us to learn from, and how it's being played out to this very day, and how we can apply it to our lives and live from it. All right, so unfortunately, I just finished my notes for this like at 4:30 today. So there are no handouts for you to fill in the blanks or to keep up, but there will be plenty of things for you to take notes on. So if you have any scrap of paper or use your prayer guide, you can flip that over and take down plenty of notes, but we'll be reading here from this passage. So let's begin reading. It says, "But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let those who are in the midst of her depart. And let not those who are in the country enter her. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. For there will be great distress in the land and wrath upon its people. And they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into the nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled by Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. And there will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the stars. And on the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. Men's hearts failing them from fear and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now, when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near." Yes, and so we'll be looking at that passage, as well as how it plays into Matthew 24. And I know we began this series looking at the kind of a leading up to the end time prophecy, when we started looking at our current events, how we are living in the final hours of the last days. And of course, I shared this last week as well, but we have now spent 9 weeks, because we did 8. We went to the rapture of the church, spent 2 weeks doing that, and then war broke out, so we did a backtrack and back into the current events. And so we've now spent 9. This will be the 10th message on what's going on right now, that we are living in the final hours of the last days. Marjorie, did I have that right? Was my math right? Yes. I think it's 10 weeks now of looking how the Bible has prophesied what we're seeing right now, that we are living in the final hours. Now, the passage we just read is definitely leading up to the rapture of the church and the Great Tribulation. Is that specifically talking about what's going on in the Middle East right now? Maybe, maybe not. But it definitely can apply, and it can definitely fit in as we look at the current events. But it doesn't necessarily mean that is exactly what it was prophesying. That's exactly what it's predicting, and we can follow it to the letter. So just follow along with me, and you will see what I'm talking about. So as we go back to our very first lesson, and that was in Matthew 24, Jesus' own words about his return, I want us to kind of go back and do a little bit of a backtrack on what we talked about that Wednesday night. It says there in Matthew 24, verse 3, "Now as he sat on the Mount of Olives," which if you've been there, you know the Mount of Olives is right outside of the temple walls of the old city of David. There's a valley that goes between where the Temple Mount is and the walls, the eastern gate, and it goes down to a valley and then up, and that's the Mount of Olives. Has a bird's eye view looking down onto the temple, which now is the Dome of the Rock. It's a Muslim. There is a mosque there where the Muslims worship, but it's also just a holy site, and that's the Dome of the Rock. And so the Mount of Olives has this great view looking into that area. So that's where Jesus led his disciples, to the Mount of Olives. The disciples came to him privately saying, "Tell us when these things will be, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age." What Jesus was telling them was really a foreign concept. They really didn't understand about the return of Christ, the establishment of his kingdom. And so they're asking him questions. Tell us more. Tell us, when will these things be? Because they didn't understand. And it wasn't just the disciples. As, was it last week? Whenever it was, I shared that, I think it was 2 weeks ago, that the rapture was a mystery. When Paul, because we talked about the rapture of the church, Paul says, this is a mystery. I'm going to reveal to you a mystery. They didn't understand this. It wasn't clear. They had a different idea, and so the disciples are saying the same thing. Tell us when these things will be, and what will be the sign of your coming at the end of the age. And so I just kind of broke this down into an outline format as to what he says will take place. Deceivers in the name of Jesus, meaning there will be false prophets, as seen there in verse 11. But also verses 4 and 5, there will be many antichrist. John talks about that also in his letter, 1 John chapter 2. There'll be wars and rumors of wars, meaning nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will also be famines and pestilences, earthquakes in various places, persecution against Christians, meaning that there'll be hatred by all nations against the Christians, and they will also kill Christians. So it goes beyond just the persecution and hatred to actually assassination of Christians, which takes place around the world. There are many places where if you get caught being a Christian, then your life is probably going to be terminated. Many will be offended. There will be betrayal, hatred towards one another, as seen in verse 10, and the love of others will grow cold, in verse 12. Lawlessness will abound, and the gospel will be preached in all the world. And we have that capability just about now. Elon Musk has done a really good job as far as getting satellites up where internet can be accessed around the world. Satellite internet is a tool, and I was listening today on the radio, and they're talking about how this world has completely changed. Social media has changed a lot of life. Having smartphones has changed our life a whole lot. Back when all of us were younger, it was just a simpler world. Your mom would let you go out and play, and you could run around all day long. And you can't necessarily do that anymore. Mom didn't worry about what you were watching. When you got on the computer, if you had a computer, which I didn't get one until I was in high school, but Mom didn't worry about what you were accessing on the internet. Now you got to worry about every video and everything. And this lady was saying that, as a parent, I could always say, well, of course it's my way or the highway. I'm going to get my way because I'm paying the bills. The clothes you got on your back, the food you got in your belly, the gas it took to get there, I paid for it, and so you're going to do what I say. Now parents can't necessarily say that, because if a child doesn't like it, well, I'll just get on social media and I'll sell something. I'll sell my Xbox, or I'll sell a pair of shoes, and now I've got my own money. And so this world is changing very rapidly, and we say, well, I don't like the way it's changed. I don't like the internet. I don't like social media. And there's a lot not to like. But at the same time, it's a great tool to get the gospel out. Those who are using the internet like we are tonight, live streaming this Bible study, is a great way of getting the gospel and getting the message all around the world. And so I remember back during COVID days, I challenged the church, do a 3 to 5 minute testimony. You use your smartphone, record yourself, upload it to Facebook or do it live, and do a testimony, because somebody, one of your friends, might watch your testimony, and who knows, they might receive Christ because you shared your testimony through a social media platform. So there's a lot of good to that aspect, and I believe that the gospel we preach to all the world, and it's being accessed now to all the world through things like that. The Wycliffe Bible Study, or the Bible translations, they are translating the Bible into all the languages, and so that's another way. We are living in one of the most technologically advanced times ever, and the gospel is going to get out and preached to all the world. Doesn't mean the whole world's going to receive it. In fact, the majority will reject it. But the access will be there for people to hear the gospel and hear about Jesus Christ. All right, I just want to point out a few key verses from Matthew 24. Verse 14 says, "Then the end will come." So in other words, what we're saying here is all the things that we just outlined right there in Matthew 24, the things that we read in Luke chapter 21, are all leading up to the end time prophecy, leading up to the rapture and the tribulation and then the millennial reign. So then the end will come. And then we go back to verse 6. It says, "See that you are not troubled." Again, this goes back to what we talked about during the study on the rapture. This is to comfort you. This is not to trouble you. If we were going to go through the 7 years of tribulation, if we were going to suffer the persecution, that'd be very troubling. This is not to trouble you. This is to comfort you. This is to give you comfort in the fact that he has you in the palm of his hand. He will take care of you. So see that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. And then in verse 8, "All these things are the beginning of sorrows." So these are like kind of the birth pains, the things leading up to the birth of the tribulation. And so if we truly are in the final hours of the last days, we've been in the last days since Jesus left this earth, because he could return at any moment. So we've always been in the last days. But if we are now approaching midnight, if we are now approaching the final few minutes or seconds of the return of Christ, the last days, we are seeing these sorrows, these birth pains before they come. All right, so we're going to look at the Middle East, and this is a map. I know it's kind of grainy or an outline, but I want to highlight the Middle East to you. So what you see right here, this is Africa, this is Saudi Arabia, going towards Asia, which, do you know that Israel is actually like in 3 different continents? Israel is considered part of Africa, part of Asia, and part of Europe. So because of different the way it's split up, that little sliver of land can be claimed by 3 different continents. Incredible. But that is Israel right here, highlighted in blue. And so we blow it up there, and what you see here is the Gaza Strip. They're highlighted in yellow. We looked at that last week. And we go back to our passage in Luke 21. We look at verse 23 and 24. "But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days, for there will be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people. And they will fall by the edge of the sword. They will be led away captive into the nations." Now, this probably is one of the most heartbreaking parts of this lesson tonight, and probably one that I really don't even talk about. But when you read verse 23 and you read that about woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies, what does that mean? Well, if this passage is dealing with what we're looking at right now in the world, and that's a big if, I understand that. We're not saying that it is, but if it is, then let's look and see how it applies to what's going on what's going on in the Middle East. If this is gearing up for the return of Christ, then we see some similarities. So NBC reported that over 40 babies were beheaded by Hamas during their raid just 2 weeks ago. There have been at least 200 hostages from 30 different nationalities, and 13 of them are Americans who were kidnapped by Hamas and led back into the Gaza Strip. Now, that's not necessarily another nation, but who knows if they're even still there? Who knows if they are still in the Gaza Strip? It is like a foreign world compared to what Israel is, so you could apply that into this lesson. But they may be in Iran by now, or somewhere else. Who knows where they could be? Over 1,400 Israelis were killed in this terrorist attack. Total, when you combine Israel's retaliation, and I don't really like using the word retaliation. That kind of seems like they're fighting back just because they're fighting back. But really, it's to stop the threat. Yeah, they're defending themselves so that Hamas can never do this again. And so it's not necessarily retaliation, which it is. There's nothing wrong with retaliation. When you've been punched in the face, you're not going to let this.
Or it's a response.
Yeah, yeah. Because that's the best illustration I can think of. If somebody comes up and punches me in the face, I'm not going to stand there and say, "Hey, thanks, do it again." You're going to defend yourself, and you are going to respond. Now, some people's response might be to fall to the ground and cover up. Others are going to be to bow up and fight back, because I'm not going to let you do that again. You may have sucker punched me one time, but you're not going to do it again. And so that's what Israel's doing right now. And so while 1,400 people were killed who were in Israel, over 4,500 people killed overall. That's because of the attacks back. We'll get into the more specifics about that here in just a little bit, because some of this has taken place even as early as this morning. While we were sleeping, things were going on over in Israel today. It looks like the IDF, which is the Israeli Defense Forces, have planned this counter evasion to actually go by foot, meaning by tank and foot soldiers, to go back and invade the Gaza Strip. That it was supposed to start. We were under the impression that it was going to start probably as early as Friday. If not Friday, then it was going to be on Saturday. Here's the difference. What did the Hamas do? They had a planned sneak attack, which, I mean, that makes sense. That's what you would do. And you would sneak, and they had these paragliders flying in, and they came in with machine guns and mowed people down. They went by I call them porta-johns, the outdoor bathrooms, the outhouses, whatever you might want to call it. They had them all lined up there for this big music fest. If you've been to a big festival or a carnival or something, they got these probably dozens of porta-johns out there, and they just went through and just shot them all. Because if anybody was hiding in there, they just wanted to just shoot them. They weren't going by and seeing if anybody, they just mowed them down. They were coming through the fence. They found a weak spot in the fence and just came through. They would go through and go house to house, slaughtering babies. Doesn't matter the age, old people, young people, everybody. And it was very brutal. But Israel had an opposite approach. Instead of doing a sneak attack, they did fire back some weapons going to what they considered to be the headquarters for Hamas. But before they actually put boots on the ground in Gaza Strip, they were sending out messages. They had leaflets they were dropping from the air, getting word out however many ways they possibly could, and telling the citizens, those who we would consider to be the innocent victims, get out. We're fixing to come in. In fact, we're coming in 24 hours, and up to 48 hours. And they gave them this warning, told them to get out. And I think it was 600,000 people were trying to escape and get to South Gaza. And we'll talk more about that here as we get closer. They had no place to go, but they were trying to escape northern Gaza, because that's where Israel said they were going to come in, because they were going to fight back. And well, that was supposed to be on Friday or Saturday, and it still has not yet happened. So why has the Gaza ground invasion been delayed? Why didn't they go in on Friday, or why didn't they go in on Saturday? Well, let's look at that question. One is that Egypt and Gaza, the border has remained closed, and as of Sunday, the diplomats were still negotiating to allow aid and foreigners through the Rafah crossing, and so they have the citizens can't just freely get out. They're still trapped in Gaza. We will come back to another reason here in a little bit because it plays into our next set of looking at our map, what's going to take place on the northern border. But right now, Israel has still not gone in by foot. It may happen soon. There may still be kind of a cat and mouse game at this point. Yesterday, on Tuesday, October the 17th, a rocket destroyed a hospital in Gaza City. It is estimated to have killed hundreds of people, and for that, Israel was blamed by Hamas for killing all these people there in this hospital. However, and if you saw in the news or you heard the president's comments, because he's over there, it's been determined that it was not an Israeli strike. It was actually a Hamas strike. Now, it wouldn't have surprised me one bit if it was intentional, but apparently it was an accident. Apparently they were firing a rocket to Israel, but Hamas's weapons and their, I guess maybe even their knowledge of how to use the weapons are not nearly as advanced as Israel's weapons. A lot of it's because they have American weapons in Israel, but so many times they fire one and it does not go where it was intended to go, and this one happened to go into a hospital and killed hundreds of people, and it was a Hamas rocket. But places like Iran are saying that this is Israel's fault. Well, they're saying the whole war is Israel's fault, that Hamas is only retaliating to Israel. That's Iran for you.
Well, Hamas would do a tactic of setting up a headquarters in the hospital.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, so they have set up headquarters in residential apartment buildings. They have headquarters in daycares.
Mosques.
Yeah, they have rocket launchers planned on top of elementary schools. So it's really, really sad. One, it's not a positive. It's just information for you. One thing to say that we have tried our best to do a good job of being good Christians. The hospital that was destroyed by this rocket was a Baptist hospital, meaning that we as Baptists have tried our best to go and share the love of Christ in a humanitarian way. So there in the Gaza Strip, we had established a hospital to try to meet the needs of those in Gaza, and unfortunately that was destroyed. But that just goes back to show you that it's the 4,500 people have been killed so far. 1,400 of them were Israeli. About 3,400 are citizens of Gaza. Well, the hospital being destroyed and it being blamed on Israel, that's not going to stop the IDF from invading Gaza. They still, as far as I can tell, the plan is for them still to go in and do a sweep so they can remove the leadership of Hamas and just remove that terrorist threat. It's really strange. You know, they have been declared a terrorist organization for decades. I mean, I can't remember how far back Hamas goes as far as being on the terrorist watch list. But the citizens of Gaza voted, not by majority. It was likened that they were a gang. I don't know if anybody's ever lived in inner city somewhere where they had gangs in neighborhoods. You know, gangs come in and they make business owners pay a tax to them, and they threaten people with this. And it's kind of like, we're in charge, you do what we say, and that's kind of what Hamas did with Gaza. They did not have a majority, but they still became the elected leadership over. They had a majority, just not a 50% majority. I think it's like in the 40% range is how they got voted into being the elected officials over Gaza Strip. When Israel and their defense forces launched the ground offense in the Gaza, it has been said they will probably have a very unique way of doing this. Probably something to be interesting to watch when it all takes place. They're going to use tactics that have never been seen before, is what I've read. They've been coordinating cyber operations and tactical drones in a way that no other country has ever achieved or been able to do. On Tuesday, October the 17th, which was yesterday, an Israeli army spokesman said the next phase of war may be different from expectations. So I'm kind of intrigued to see what that's going to look like. So pay attention to the news. All right, so that's the Gaza Strip. That's where most of the activities have been taking place. for the last 2 weeks or 10 days. And so we've been focused in on that, and that's what the news coverage has been. That's what you've been studying. That's what you hear so much about. You may or may not know there's a whole lot more going on there in the small country of Israel. So let's now go to the next phase, and that's the West Bank. The West Bank is also Palestinian controlled. Since I've been to Israel, I've never been to the Gaza Strip. I don't know. I guess I probably could be allowed in there, but it's different than going to the West Bank. West Bank, I can go to. I've been to the West Bank the 2 times I've been to Israel. In fact, I've been able to go back and forth. It's just different, and it may be just as hostile, but it's not nearly as populated. And so the West Bank just has a different feel to it than what the Gaza Strip would. But in the last 10 days, in the West Bank, at least 58 Palestinians have been reported killed there. Also, Israel has arrested 83 operatives, and 51 of them were Hamas guerrillas. And so we see that some stuff is starting to take place over on the West Bank. Now, Jerusalem is kind of in this area right here. You got Bethlehem down in here. One of my favorite places to go is Shiloh. I think it's right up in this area here in the West Bank. And so if you got Jerusalem right here smack dab in the middle between all this, and then we're fixing to look at all the other countries around here too. But Jerusalem, the capital city, God's city, is smack dab in the middle of what's going on right now. Let's look at the northern front. Now this map is a little bit different. We had to kind of pan out a little bit because we're now going to be bringing in some other countries. So Israel's still right here. That's still in blue. Anybody tell me what this green country right here is? Jordan, thank you. Anybody know what's above in the yellow? Above where I can reach? Lebanon, yeah, Lebanon. The pink, or whatever that color that is? Syria. Anybody know this one?
Iraq.
Yep, very good. Now, what's the big one? Yeah, y'all are good. Man, y'all know your geography. Very nice. And so here's the Sinai Peninsula. Saudi Arabia is right in here. You got other countries around here. Egypt is right here. And we're going to see all that too because there's more at play than just the Middle East. But here, as we look at the northern border of Israel, the reason why all these others are now in view is because we're going to see they're at play for the northern border of Israel. If you were in wartime, you might call this the northern front because it's now, you get the southern front or maybe the western front where Gaza Strip is, but now there's a second area of concern, a second place of battle. Clashes, let's see. Clashes and shelling has continued. And on Sunday, there was some attacks on Israel's northern border with Lebanon. Israel has said that it has struck the Syrian airports in Damascus and Aleppo. You might know how you say that? Aleppo, thank you. There has been some intelligence that counterattack, that if Israel had gone into Gaza Strip on Friday or Saturday, Israeli intelligence, and maybe even coupled with American intelligence, maybe even British intelligence, I'm not sure how wide the scan is, but the intelligence was telling them that if they had gone into Gaza when they had planned to, that Hezbollah and others were going to march right on in or attack from the north. And Israel was not prepared for that. They had put all their attention at Gaza, and they were ready to go in. And if they had done so, they would have been vulnerable on the northern front. They even had an Israeli high-ranking official who was in the military said so. He said, "We are about to enter into Gaza, but we have no defenses on the north." Well, you say that, and what's the enemy going to do? They're going to attack. So That's what the intelligence was saying, and so they backed off. They did not do their march into Gaza, and so that's why we have not yet seen that strategic plan put in place. So when we were talking about that earlier, that why have they not gone in there? Well, one, they want to give the citizens of Gaza a chance to get out. But really, the main reason is because if they had done so, they probably would have been attacked from the north, and they would have had anybody there to guard the back door. And so that's why they stopped. So part of this intelligence has said that not only is it Hezbollah, but that it is part of Iran. That Iran has been deploying arms in and through Syria, and that they are going to go through Syria, which is, as you can tell, it borders Israel. The Golan Heights is right up in here, and you got Syria and Lebanon. Lebanon is where the Hezbollah is, and so Iran has been moving ammunitions to Syria, and looks like they are moving towards the northern border of Israel. Let's see, let me just read this so I'll make sure I get it said right. That there was intelligence that their counterattack was planned for the north by Hezbollah, which is an Iran-backed terrorist organization that dominates South Lebanon. It also operates alongside Iran's elite Revolutionary Guard Corps in Syria. It looks as though the plan was to attack from the north while Israel's forces were invading Gaza from the south, leaving them vulnerable. All right, so I said all that. It's been reported just, I think today, where I got this, that Hezbollah attacked several Israeli locations, including 2 gatherings of troops. The Israeli military said that 2 reservists and a civilian were injured in an anti-tank missile attack from Lebanon today. I may have gotten that today since I put all this together today, or that could have been Sunday's news. I've been using a couple different sources. So that is where Hezbollah is attacking from the north. So it's now not just a Gaza Strip battle, but now they're having to defend their northern border. All right, well, let's look even farther north. If you remember, if you know anything about Bible prophecy and what is still yet to come, you have the enemy from the north, and oftentimes it makes reference to Rosh and Tubal, and those are the capitals, the European capital and the Asian capital of Russia, and we have often heard that Russia is the great enemy to the north. So I'll go and tell you, this big, huge blob of green looks like a giant cloud. That is Russia. Anybody know what country this is?
China.
Very good. Man, y'all aced your geography classes in school, I can tell. So, while all of this is going on right here on this little bitty sliver of land, right here, you got Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Iraq, Iran. Now you look at these big monsters over here, China and Russia, and their involvement over this little bitty sliver of land. In fact, that little bitty dot that we had right here that was in yellow, that is what's causing all this commotion. Today, Vladimir Putin, that's the president of Russia, met with the president of China, and that's President Xi Jinping. I hope I said his name right. I've heard it 1,000 times, but I don't speak Chinese, so I don't know if I say anything right in any other language. I can't even speak English right, much less any other language. But they met today and had discussions about what's going on in Ukraine and other things, but they also met and discussed what's going on in Israel. And they talked about Israel and Hamas, and Vladimir Putin gave a very strict or stern warning to President Biden and to America as to our involvement in what's going on in Israel and what has been said. And so that was very, very interesting. And we'll get to President Biden here in just a moment. But very interesting comments from the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, in regards to Israel and to the United States of America. let's remember Luke 21, verse 20. It says, "But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near." All right, I know it's hard to see because we pulled out so far on this map, but you can see the blue Israel right there, can't you? I mean, y'all in the back, you might not be able to see it quite so well, and those who are watching online may not be able to see it very well, but you got this little bitty sliver of land, and what do you see all around? You can see
nations surrounding Israel.
Yeah, they are. And they've always been there. They've always been surrounding it in proximity. But now we're seeing them not just in proximity, not just in rhetoric of their hatred towards Israel, but now we're seeing armies actually things taking place. The sabers not just rattling, but they're actually coming out of their sheaths and ready to press forward. And so Jerusalem is being surrounded.
I heard earlier this evening that the people that are surrounding, especially in Turkey and other areas, Israel has sent planes to get them because there has been a threat to all of the Jewish people in the countries surrounding that they are going in to kill them. And so, whatever their airlines
Yeah.
have sent lots of planes. Some people have fled to other nations, but they're now moving all of the people they possibly can as quickly as they can from Turkey and all of the
Yeah.
areas around them.
Yeah, and that's one of the really sad stories, is that, all the nations who had no involvement in what Hamas did, but they're out celebrating. College campuses here in America, or city governments throwing a Palestinian parade or some type of big celebration, saying death to Israel, and from the river to the sea, is that their chant? If you remember, let's go back. Let's go back so you can. So the Jordan River runs right down here. The Mediterranean Sea is right over here. And so what they want to do is they want to push them from the Jordan River all the way to the sea. That doesn't mean they want to just get them all to be coastal people and all be beach people. What that means is they want to, and not just get them all so they can have the land. You realize it's not about the land? That's what the news media wants you to believe, that the Palestinians want their land back. They never had the land. It was never Palestinian land. Never. Not in the history of the world were Palestinians ever in control of the land. Palestinians is kind of more a newer term. Now, Islam has been there. The Ottoman Empire was an Islamic empire. There have been Muslims there. That's why they had the Dome of the Rock. But it was never, ever Palestinian land. But you know whose land it was long, 3,000 years ago? It was Jewish land. It was given to Abraham. It was Abraham's land and Abraham's descendants, and it was theirs. And so they want to push the seed of Abraham, not just push them out. They don't just want the land. What they want is they want to annihilate the Jewish people. They don't want Israel to live, not just not have land. They don't want them on the face of the earth. And so when you hear them use that phrase, from the river to the sea, that means they're wanting to kill them all. And that's what they're trying to do right now. It's not because they want the land. It's not because they want to have control of the Dome of the Rock. While all that is a minor player, the main thing is they want Israel dead. All right. So we have looked at Russia and China and their involvement, and how Jerusalem is now being surrounded. Let's now spread all the way out and look at how this is now a world event. So, if you knew all these countries, surely you know that one, right? Yeah, I know you do. We see that America is now in discussion with this. The United States has sent 2 aircraft carriers into the eastern Mediterranean. That was over the weekend, and so they are now there. Also, the 26th Marine Expeditionary Unit, the MEU, known as the Rapid Response Force, is currently on its way. I'm not sure how we even know that. We shouldn't know that kind of stuff, I wouldn't think. But I guess, what's the expression? Loose lips sink ships. Hopefully that's not going to sink any ships, but they are in the waters off of Israel as we speak. President Biden went to Israel. Anybody watch any of his press conferences today? I know, he catches a lot of flack, especially from those who are Christian and those who are here in this class. He's probably, yeah, yeah. But I, as much grief as we give our current president, and really any president, we probably have bashed all of them at some point or another. We give them grief when they deserve it. We also ought to give them credit when they deserve it. And I think in this case, I want to give our president a lot of credit. One of the most encouraging things that I saw him do was he hugged Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. A very strong, symbolic occasion that they met and they gave each other an embrace, a hug. That spoke volumes. Also, he was supposed to go from Israel to Jordan tomorrow. The reason why that is because his party, the Democrats, initially they came out pretty much very vocally in support in supporting Israel. Now they're saying that it's about 50-50. That 50% still want to be friends to Israel. The other 50 say we should not. So he's gonna get earfuls coming from both sides. And so he was going to go to Jordan tomorrow, which would probably be in a few hours from now, because they're 7 hours ahead of us. That he was supposed to go there and meet with some Palestinians and other Islamic leaders, and that trip has now been canceled because today, while he was speaking, he made a very, I don't know if you want to call it a strong, you might want to call it a blunder, but he had already referred to Israel and Hamas, and he's there with Benjamin Netanyahu showing his support for Israel. And when he was referring to the rocket that landed at the hospital and destroyed and killed so many people, he said it was not our team, or it was the other team. Kind of not really the best use of words. This is not a game. It's not team. This is the enemy. And if you said enemy, probably even worse. But instead of saying Hamas did this was a Hamas rocket, he now said it's the other team, as in our enemy. Well, the Palestinians said, we're not meeting with President Biden. He's already taken sides. He's already on the Israel side, which, he's already said it. He's there. Our carriers, we've got 2 carriers in the Mediterranean. We are sending over, and I heard this after I already finished my lesson, thousands upon thousands of military gear to go over there. And so it's already pretty clear that we were there to defend and protect Israel. And here is the thing to watch. Do they stick to their guns? Kind of, I think what Donna was alluding to during our prayer time was, are we going to stick to what we say, or are we going to listen to the opposition and either bow out or change sides or whatever? So I want to congratulate and thank our president for the strong stance he has taken. I hope he doesn't back out on his word. I hope he doesn't change his opinion, and I hope that he and our Congress, who, that's the whole other thing we talked about before we went live and before we started, we need to have a Speaker of the House. We can't really make decisions. We can't go in and do anything until all that is in place. And right now, we don't have a Speaker of the House because our elected officials can't get their act together. Anybody here read Babylon Bee? Anybody know what that is? All right, Babylon Bee is a satirical website / social media presence run by Christians, and it mainly focuses on Christian things and Christian events. Not always mature humor. Sometimes it's very juvenile and immature, but it's a Christian satirical website that posts things on social media. Well, their post for today was that President Biden was going to Israel to to oversee the beginning of World War III. Very satirical, very dark, but potentially true. Maybe not necessarily to oversee it because he's on his way back home now because he couldn't stay in Jordan. But it's very possible that the way the sabers have been rattling, we could see all these other countries right in there get involved. If Russia and China are talking about this, we know Russia's going to be involved at some point somehow, and we know that Iran hates Israel's ever-loving existence. They're going to be involved in this, which used to be Persia. Persia's in the Bible. We know there's going to be some more. Is it now? Or is this just the beginning of what's still yet to come? I don't know. Donna?
I was in a doctor's office yesterday, and when you sign in, the nurse there, she said, "How are you doing?" I said, "Not so good." When you hear all of these lies and so forth, she says, "Yeah, my husband's already been called up. 2,000 have been called, and that are not part, you're out of the military, but you're still on standby."
Right.
And I thought, whoa, so.
Yeah.
Saying all the different things. So you hear so much.
Right. Yeah, good point. Don't trust everything you see or read or hear from the media. That has been skewed for a long time. Just pray. That's the main thing.
Chris, I think the same thing about World War III has been said time and time again. You remember few of us in here remember the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Same thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I would imagine, I mean, of course, I wasn't alive, but I would imagine that there were probably some Bible studies very similar to this one, thinking this is the end of the world. This is going to hasten in the return of Christ. And rightfully so. We should always be prepared. We should always think that this is leading to the return of Christ. If we stop doing that, then we have stopped obeying what Scripture says as to being ready. What did we read there in Luke chapter 21, verse 28. Now, when these things begin to happen, look up, lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. We are supposed to be expecting this. Every single generation should believe the rapture or the tribulation or whatever your eschatology view is. We should all believe that's going to happen in our lifetime. If you don't, then you're not obeying Scripture. Because not only does it say this here in Luke 21, it says it again in Revelation. We are to anticipate it. And so they probably preached it back in the 60s. Probably has been preached in every time there's any type of skirmish going on, anytime there's a war, rumor of war, or an earthquake that takes place, whatever. Yeah, it just makes us think more about it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Where it becomes wrong is if it leads you to live in fear. If you are so anxious that you're petrified, you can't live, you can't do your life, you can't share the gospel, you're now so worried about everything, that's where it has messed you up. But what we should do is look forward with great anticipation, saying he could come tonight. I expect him to come tonight. And live with that excitement.
Maranatha.
Yeah. But if he doesn't come tonight, then I'm still going to work and please and serve and do everything I can for him. So that is the way we should approach this. All right, there's one more point before we get to my conclusion. And this is kind of a summary of what's going on with America's involvement. The United States has deployed 2 of its largest aircraft carriers, including the nuclear-powered USS Gerald Ford, to the eastern Mediterranean to support Israel if the situation on the Lebanon-Israel border combust into full-scale war. So that's the plan. The plan is for us currently to support Israel. And if things escalate, then you're person you talked to today, her husband could get called up and could be sent over. There could be more involvement, and it could turn into something much, much larger. It could turn into something like a World War III. I pray that it doesn't do that, because then we'll see a lot more casualties, and it'll be a lot more involvement that we probably weren't anticipating. But if it does, then we are, again, hastening the return of Christ. It's just one more thing, it's one more step towards his return. I mean, I believe it, that we are one breath closer to his return. Today, we are one day closer to his return. And every single event just points to that. Whether it is something grand on the world scale or something small in your daily life, everything ought to lead you to realize that Jesus Christ could return today. So let's get ready. Let's share the good news of Christ to those around us. All right, so I want to give you a kind of a synopsis, a summary of it all. Hamas is still playing dirty, and they're still attacking Israel. Hezbollah is doing attacks from Lebanon. Shias of Syria are approaching the Israeli border. Iran is supplying and supporting Hamas there in the south, and we also know that they are moving things in to the north. And Israel could possibly face a war on 5 fronts. 5 fronts. That would be Hamas to the southwest, Hezbollah directly to the north of Lebanon, Iran, who's going to come in through Syria, and Syria is getting their militia prepared, and also the Palestinians near the Jordan River, which that would be the West Bank. So here, Israel, and more specifically Jerusalem, could see everything converging right there on that. Does that not fulfill Bible prophecy? It most certainly does. So Israel could see itself being attacked in every single area. Now, kind of changing subjects just a little bit, but still sticking with this same theme. Anybody know what took place Saturday? It wasn't just Amelia's birthday party. It was cloudy here. We probably didn't see. Yeah, there was an eclipse that took place in America. It's the second one we've had in the last, 5, 6 years. We had a big one come through. Has anybody seen the path that the eclipse took? 5, 6 years ago, and the one that just recently took place?
Went from like Missouri to North Carolina somewhere?
Yeah, something like that.
North Georgia?
Yeah, I think it actually came from Washington State. I think it went all the way across. It was transcontinental, across the entire United States. The second one, according to the maps, I don't know how this even takes place. I guess maybe because of the different season and where the sun is positioned, whatever. But supposedly they made an intersection and they made a cross. Interesting to think about, because the passage we read here in Luke 21, verse 25 says, "And there will be signs in the" what? Sun, in the moon. Well, what do you need for an eclipse? Sun and the moon. And it wasn't too many years ago that there was a big phenomenon in the stars. I have a sermon on that about the Revelation 12 stars. Gosh, I can't remember now. It's been so long since I preached that, but because it happened probably 7, 8 years ago. But there was a phenomenon in the stars that had us all like, gosh, that's like Bible prophecy being fulfilled right there before our very eyes. The Bible tells us to look to nature and to look to the sky, and there'll be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars. Now, this took place in America. America's not mentioned in Bible prophecy. It doesn't matter what we do or don't do. America's somehow got to get out the scene, because we're not mentioned. There's nowhere that we're mentioned in the Bible whether it's Old Testament, New Testament, Acts, the letters, end times and Revelation and Daniel. There's no mention of America, so we've got to be gone. We got to be out of the picture. And so why in the world do I even bring this up? I only bring this up because of what's going on globally. It just so happens at the same time, about a week after Hamas attacked Israel, the greatest friend to Israel, the big brother to Israel, where the majority of Christians are in the world, hopefully, I pray that we have that, an eclipse happened, a solar eclipse, and while we didn't get to see much of it because of the cloud cover, it was right here. And I know I went outside to go look up. Maybe you did, maybe many others did as well, but it just shows you that while we probably spend all of our time watching the news, or I have, it gave us a chance to go outside and look up and look at the sun and the moon and see. I couldn't see it in the sky because of the clouds, but I could take my phone, using that smartphone, the technology, and I was able to see that the moon was right in front of the sun. You know, also, there were two planets right there beside it too. I think it was Mars and Mercury, I believe, were side by side. You know, in my phone, it makes it look like they're right there, and probably millions of miles apart. But on my phone, looking at it, yeah, the sun, the moon, and two planets right on top of one another. If it wasn't so cloudy, what a sight to see. So, signs in the sky and on earth, distress of nations. Distress of nations. And then when Jesus, he said that in Luke 21, he also said this in Matthew 24 about wars and rumors of wars. The earth, distress of nations, wars and rumors of wars, it all just kind of fit. So I had to throw that in because it looks like, man, I know that one's taking place in the Middle East and one took place in America, and they really, by geography, they have no correlation whatsoever, but by timing and by reading it in Scripture, it looks like it fits. You know, only God knows if it does or not, but pretty spectacular to me, in my opinion. So, if this is, okay, I'm sorry, let's keep on going because there's some more things to look at before I give you your final conclusion. In Luke 26, it says, men's hearts failing them from fear and expectation of those things which are coming on the earth. Donna, you said you talked to somebody who had some fear and anxiety. Probably there are many other people, not just those in the Middle East, but people around the world who are fearful what's going to happen next. Now, when these things begin to happen, here's your instruction. Look up. Lift up your heads because your redemption draws near. So we read verse 26. That's what's taking place right now. Verse 28 gives us instruction. Now, when these things begin to happen, look up, lift up your heads because your redemption draws near. Why? Because, you go back a verse, you will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. That's what's still yet to happen. That's what happens maybe very soon. And very soon could be a relative term. Very soon in God's eyes could be in a second, it could be in a million years. That is on his timetable, not ours. All we know is he gives us instruction to look up, lift up your head, your redemption draws near, and we will see the Son of Man coming on a cloud with power and great glory. So what comes next? What needs to happen for this prophecy to be fulfilled? For this, meaning that it's taking place right now. I want to make it very clear that I'm not saying that Luke 21 that we read is taking place right now. But if it is, these things that we read will be what takes place next. So these are the things to pay attention to. Verse 21. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let those who are in the midst of her depart. And let not those who are in the country enter her. So if we start to see people fleeing from southern Israel into the mountains, they've shut off the borders, which that may already have happened. They're probably not letting anybody pass through from anywhere into Israel. And there may be some people say, well, that's already taken place. People who are in the southern Israel are getting out because of their proximity to Gaza. So that may already be taking place. I haven't heard anything about that. Donna, you have better contacts than I do. You might know someone who could tell us, have people been fleeing Judah or the southern Israel to get to the mountains? Verse 22, for these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Verse 24, and Jerusalem will be trampled by Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Now, this is a very interesting prophecy. The Gentiles would be anybody who's not a Jew. And so it could be Muslims, could be Christians, could be atheists, could be anybody who's not a Jew to trample upon Jerusalem. We are in the time of the Gentiles now. Because salvation is offered to Gentiles just like it has been offered to Jews. But we are in the time of Gentiles, so that's referring to right now when the tribulation comes, that's no longer the time of Gentiles. Because the way I understand this, and I could be wrong, I would need to sit down with some really good prophecy experts who are better than I am. And Glenn, you might even be able to answer this question for me. I would liken the time of the Gentiles, listen in verse 24, as the church age. But once we move into the tribulation, that's the wrath of God. We'll see the redemption of Israel because the church age is gone. So I would liken that there, verse 24, the time of the Gentiles, to the time we're living in right now. But once the rapture occurs, we move into the tribulation, that we're moving into a different time. Would that sound reasonable? Maybe? Yeah. Somebody who's much more educated in prophecy could probably set us all straight, but that's the way I would interpret that at this moment. And then verse 25, with perplexity, or another word for that would be confusion. The seas and the waves roaring. Now, if you talk to some people, that's already taken place because of climate change and the way the oceans have risen or fallen and all that. They say that the seas and the waves are already roaring. They're not happy with us as mankind. They believe it's already taken place. There's definitely confusion in the world. I believe that we're seeing a lot of confusion take place within a lot of different camps when it comes to gender and then sexual orientation. There's a whole lot of confusion in that regard. So maybe we may be seeing 25 already being fulfilled. I just think it's going to get a lot worse. I think it will be much more obvious than what we're seeing right now. And so these are the things to pay attention to. These would be the things that I would say, let's look and see if these are being fulfilled. And if they are being fulfilled, then all those other things that we've already looked at, they are being fulfilled. And so this would be a prophecy that's being fulfilled and being lived out this very day. So at this point, I'm not going to say it is. It's just a lot of similarities, a lot of things to look at and say, wow. And so there you go. All right, any questions or feedback from this? Was it over your head or did it? Well, some are saying it's perfect and thumbs up, and some are saying, man, I'm so lost. I'm like a ball in the high weeds. Well, I tried my best to put it down at a layman's level, but God forgive me. I get really excited about all this, and it's a lot more fun. In fact, I spent 3 days preparing this. I haven't even started looking at my Sunday morning message yet, so I may get there Sunday morning and say, oh, I got nothing, guys. I spent all my time preparing for Wednesday night. But I do get excited about it because, one, it's fascinating to see what goes on in the world. Two, I do think we are preparing for something really, really big, and not just on a world scale. I mean for an eternal scale. I mean for what Christ is about to do. And so that's what gets me all excited. So, all right. Well, why don't we close in prayer? And if you ever have any questions or if something kind of stirs a thought or something you want to talk about, man, let me know. I'm always ready and willing to talk. I don't always have the answer, but I can always research it, and because I do enjoy looking up and lifting up my head and preparing for our redemption because it's drawing near. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for our time tonight. We thank you for being able to discuss all these things. And Lord, we don't know if Luke 21 and Matthew 24 are being played out right before our very eyes or not. But we do know that you are at work. We do know that you are on your throne. And we do know that this could be what is hastening in and bringing about your return. But regardless of whether it is today, tomorrow, next year, next 1,000 years from now, we want to be faithful and obedient to you. We want to continue to look forward with great anticipation of what you're going to do, looking forward with great anticipation the return of Christ, and just serving you with gladness. And so help us to be your faithful, obedient servants. Help us to point others to you. And if things are shaping up to bring about the return of Christ, then that just means we better be really busy because our time is drawing near, and there's not much time left to lead others to Christ. So just take us and use us and help us to be your mouthpiece. And so we thank you for this and all that you do in and through our lives. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.